All right, good morning, and we're a little bit early for this video, but been trying to keep track of how everything's going to be converted, potentially for the 2026 budget. So many of you know this current administration has eliminated a great deal of funding for vouchers. I know 90% of HUD's employees have been terminated or let go, and we're going to be moving from a Section 8 system at the federal level to statewide voucher system. And I'm going to explain how that's going to work today. I finally got some information back. And the first thing I'm going to tell you is, NAHRO is going to be the primary. So when the federal system at current is in place, Nana McKay underwrote the policies and procedures for most housing authorities. And so the new company that deals more or less with statewide vouchers will be NAHRO. Now, getting into the proposals here. So, if we're successful, if the Trump administration is successful with this change and getting it approved through Congress, what we've been looking at is dividing up vouchers, and then they'll be creating what they call an Emergency Solutions Grant, or ESG, which has already existed on the federal system. Now, the ESG program will be rolling together many different programs. So the goal here would be to create two different grants, the State Rental Assistance Block Grant and the Emergency Solutions Grant, or ESG program. Now, how that's going to work out is first, the proposed budget will make a series of changes to community development programs, the Home Investment Partnership, Community Development Block Grant, CDBG programs. And what's going to happen is they're going to consolidate the Continuum of Care program, Housing with Opportunities, or HIB. VAWA is going to also be rolled in that, and it'll all be put under ESG. Now, for those that don't know, that would be Continuum of Care programs, or for more or less addressing those that are homeless. Okay, so ESG will be one thing that's issued to the state as a grant and a big block of funding. Okay, secondary is going to be, instead of dealing with housing authorities, you in 2026, provided Congress gets their skinny budget approved, will be the State Rental Assistance Block Grants. Okay, it consolidates public housing, Section 8 tenant-based housing, project-based rental assistance, housing for elderly, and housing for persons with disabilities. This entire block of programs will be blocked into one funding level. It will be handed to the state, and then the state will move to we will move from a federal system to a state voucher system. Now, I'm kind of coining a term here because we don't know just yet how they're going to propose the name for this, but we're going to call it now the State Rental Assistance Vouchers. Okay, so we'll be going from Section 8 to State Rental Assistance Vouchers, or State Rental Assistance Programs. That's going to be the key word here. Now, looking at what Congress has already done for this administration, I believe at this point that the odds of this going through, and we move from the federal system to allocating funds to the state and having the state issue vouchers rather than Section 8, is probably 95%. Unless Democrats take over the House and win it, which is a 5% chance, this is what's going to happen. So far, there's nothing to lead me believe that Republicans are going to lose the House, and so this was going to happen. So for everybody that has a voucher currently under Section 8 in the federal system, you'll be converting over to a state voucher. Now, I've done plenty of research, made phone calls, hundreds of hours of research, and talking to major companies. And what I've learned is most states do have a state voucher system in place. Now, the good news is, unlike housing authorities, their system's set up pretty good. I don't know if they can handle the extra volume. They're going to have to, but if this were to proceed for 2026, many of you will be requalifying. Now, to be clear, on the requalification, there's going to be a different set of rules in place, and that will be a 2-year cap for able-bodied people. Okay, so if you are not 62 years and older, and you do not have a disabled person in your home, there will be a 2-year limit placed, and there'll be work requirements. If you don't meet those things, then you will lose the voucher inside the 2 years. I do not know whether or not you can apply again for another 2 years or not, but that's going to be the new system. So again, we're not going to be using housing authorities going forward. Many of them will likely become insolvent at this point because the states generally that issue vouchers at the state level do not involve the housing authority. Okay, so housing authorities likely will become a thing of the past. Now, the good news is most state controlled programs that issue vouchers, and I'm already compiling a list of all 50 states. These are educated people, and as long as now, here's my concern: we're moving into a better system of things where the state handles it. Okay, and as far as I can tell, the same preferences and procedures are going to be in place. Now, whether or not Section 8 renters from the federal system go and catch an attitude and ruin this by being mentally ill or doing other gregarious activities or continuing playing legal games and suing the state, stuff like that, is going to determine whether or not these people remain pleasant to deal with, or they're going to turn into the same monsters that the housing authority is. Now, I know from consulting, there are many people that have a lot of underlying issues and they create nothing but problems, which in turn take good employees and turn them bad. And it's a two-way street. I mean, housing authorities are known for hiring people with very little education and a high turnover to run the place. So as it stands now, the state rental systems program that we may be facing next year will likely be a pleasant experience as long as everybody behaves and we don't turn this into a bunch of lawsuits, complaints, and being a nuisance, okay? Now, what will happen is the ESG will readdress those of you out there that are homeless. It'll deal with HOPWA and VAWA, which are persons living with AIDS, or also those with domestic violence. And the other block grant will be issued again to the state, and that will be the state rental assistance block grant. Now, there'll be a steep cut, but the cut is because they're putting a 2-year cap. So we're expecting to lose roughly 60%. About 60% of the people that have a voucher now will likely lose it in 2026 and have to requalify under a 2-year limit, unless you have a senior that's 62 years and older or disabled in the home. So beyond that, we're looking into NARROW, which is the new agency that handles state level policies and procedures. I'll be looking into that company very shortly to get all their policies and procedures. It appears that the state system follows very closely to how Section 8 works through housing authorities. So I think in principle, if we can get cooperation state to state, then there may be opportunities for portability. I think that a lot of the rules and policies that are already in place are pretty much a clone of what the federal system is. The real differentiating factor is wait times will be much shorter, I believe. And I think that you're going to deal with a lot more pleasant people. And again, I'm really hoping, okay, because even in my industry as a consultant, I deal with probably 1,000 or more people a year. Roughly half of them can be a nuisance because of other out of control mental health issues, attitudes, constantly trying to sue the housing authority, making wild accusations. If you guys take that to the state level and drive those people crazy, then they're going to become just as nasty and as ugly as the former housing authorities that you will have been dealing with prior to 2026. So please, when we move to a state system and state vouchers next year, do not drive these people fucking crazy, okay? That way they will remain pleasant, short wait lists will be short, and we won't get all the different attitudes, okay? It's usually through state, when the state funds something or accepts funds as a block grant through the feds, you're talking dealing with people that actually care, that are highly educated in most cases, and it's a highly efficient system. So please don't drive these people crazy. It's kind of like a new guard at a prison. They're nice until you make them unpleasant, okay? So I'm hoping everybody's going to be the best behavior as we transition from federal vouchers to statewide vouchers. Now, the good news is the infrastructure is already there. Many of the states already have a state voucher system. I've never practiced that area, but I'm going to begin practicing that starting next month, which means I will be getting all the policies and procedures, administrative plans, and any statewide information related to all 50 states. So I'm planning on being ready for 2026. Now, to suggest that this won't pass Congress, well, look, Mr. Trump has gotten everything so far, and unless they tip the iceberg on the House and Democrats take it, then we have every reason to believe this will go through. And so, too much of the system has already been removed and reduced to believe that this is not. Look, we already discussed prior to this, years going back to 2019, that eventually we would have to transition to a new system. Here it is. Okay. And the likelihood at this point is 95%. So many of you that have right now, look, I know a lot of you guys are worried about home ownership and all that. Look, this is going to be moving federal funds, giving them one big check to them, two big checks really, and then letting them process housing vouchers. No more housing authorities, except for big cities that may already have a housing authority in place. They may transition those employees out and then get state employees in there. And I'm telling you, I'm not saying it's going to be perfect, but there's going to be lots of hiccups, lots of loopholes. But they're pretty efficient. One, because states have had a lot of time to have the infrastructure in place for probably over a decade. Number two, they're staffed pretty good, and they're staffed by well-qualified people. And it looks like nonprofits may also be involved in ESG, which means for a lot of you nonprofits out there, there's a high potential that the state may turn over ESG grants to you through the state to allow you to continue to process. So places like Catholic Charities, and Goodwill, and so on, that may have programs for housing, there may be opportunities there. I really don't see that housing authority is going to survive this at all because they're not set up for this. The state really doesn't have any reason to want to cooperate at that level unless the state owns a housing authority. They may convert the building over, but otherwise, I would imagine that for the most part, most housing authorities will simply become insolvent, sell the portfolio, maybe sell it to the state, and then things will transition from there. Now, whether or not agreements are going to remain with LITCH programs, LITCH, project-based, I think the project-based housing may eventually become a thing of the past. We may move to an all-voucher system. The vast majority of households that will have vouchers without a time limit will be 62 years and older and or have a disability. Right now, I'm trying to figure out what the qualifying factor will be for a disability. Now, under the federal system, it was different. Now, the state may have a new defining line of what they consider to be disabled. I would imagine looking at so far a lot of state vouchers systems that I've been rolling through and reading through, I think that the standards can be about the same. So the systems are pretty much based off of each other. I mean, the state based its already small program off of the federal system. So there's going to be a lot of parallels there. The big difference is the people that are managing this, the 2-year caps, and then, of course, the lack of funding may shut down a lot of 202 and 811 programs, subsidies and all that. So we may be moving to a complete voucher system. This will also be a high point for addressing homelessness because a lot of the block grants, including ESG and state rental assistance blocks, the two big blocks of money the feds will be turning over to the state, will heavily be addressing homelessness. Okay. So there's going to be money for that. It's ultimately up to the state how they allocate that and to what programs, how they transition this as well. I'm looking, and I'm as curious as anybody to see how they're going to allocate between that. Now, if the feds mandate that a certain number of millions go to homeless, to seniors, to domestic violence, then they may have a mandate in which they're required to use certain funding to a certain point for each state. But the infrastructure is there. I think the states are only going to struggle with, they're going to have to expand that. Now, the larger cities like LA and New York, since they typically own their own housing authority, they only need to convert the building, fire everybody in there, and then get in state employees and then implement the state system. Or because I don't really see the state wanting to give away the profitable end of this. They're taking on a bigger responsibility. So why would they want to keep the housing authority around? and just kind of subcontract that, because the housing authority technically wouldn't understand how the state system would work. So this may very well be the end of most housing authorities as we know it. Now, there will obviously every state makes their own choices. That's why I'm going to be in a rat race all month to collect the information for each and every state. I'm going to make that information public for you guys. I'm going to compile state voucher systems for all of you so you can start to look at this. Now, I don't want anybody preemptively to get out there and start jumping into the state system until we see what's going to happen in 2026. We don't know what the transition, what's going to happen through transition. In other words, those that already have vouchers, those that already have Section 811, 202, and so on, we don't know how all that's going to be transitioned yet. I'm going to be hunting down that information, trying to talk with different agencies to figure out how all that stuff's going to work out. So we're still working on that part. But it looks like my company will probably change to section. It will no longer be Section 8 Consulting. It'll likely be State Housing Vouchers.com. I'm not thrilled about changing the company name, but let's be honest. If we're walking out of the federal system, and states are now going to be the administrator for federal funds regarding housing and programs, then it looks like, we'll have to make the adjustment at my office. So that's what I'll be working on. Also reaching out to some of the bigger companies that underwrite the policies and procedures for the state level vouchers. So I think that based on that information, we can expect that there will be somewhat of a smooth transition. There will be lots of dust kicked up, I'm sure. People are going to have problems with certain things, but the good thing here is states are not walking into something new. They're just operating at a smaller scale. This is going to give them a lot more money. This is going to eliminate 60% of the crowd. This is going to make wait time shorter. You'll probably be dealing with more pleasant staff considering it's state level, but you also understand, because you're not dealing with simple people at a housing authority, that state employees are also not going to take shit off people, okay? You risk a lot by creating problems for state level employees. So if they do staff this with state employees, it would be ill-advised to start lawsuits, drama, emailing, calling 20 times a day, and all the other erratic behavior that I see sometimes out of clients. You want to shut that shit down, because I tell you, you don't want to fuck with your state. Okay, you never mess in your own backyard. So what I'm telling you is, you guys need to treat these people with respect, and then give it back the same way, because you'll no longer probably be dealing with the housing authority. Housing authorities are set up, trained by volume to administrate federal programs. Since that will not exist likely in 2026, then we'll be moving again to state system, where every state sets its own policies and procedures. And we're going to be getting a hold of that. It's going to be a monumental task, but I've got about 6 months, and I think me and my office can take care of that. So we'll continue to work with clients, answer questions, make videos, and of course, work through cases as we need. It'll also remove the big cost of casework, because we'll be moving in a simpler system, I think, and we'll have to see. So I know the casework and its cost will likely be reduced by nearly half. And that's because it would be a lot easier to navigate this system. It's more straightforward. It's better organized, because there's more of a focus through the state than there is some random housing authority with a bunch of people with an attitude, okay? So that's part of it. Let's go and look into the questions here. I see you guys are writing quite a bit. Sheila Davison says hello and good morning to you. Mickey and Angel, thank you for taking the time to share this critical information for many of us disabled seniors and others have been on the waiting list. Also, to make one clarifying factor, we don't have a determination what's considered a senior, but I would imagine since these are federal funds, then we'll continue to consider senior 62. And I'm pretty sure the same standard that we consider disabled, whether you have a disability payment or you qualify under federal as disabled under HUD, then you'll likely still qualify under state level. It's the same thing. In other words, the state is not trying to rewrite the book. It's just simply trying to keep up with it, okay? So a lot of parallels. The bigger changes is more organization, better employees, higher paid, better, just a better system in place, and you're dealing locally. Where the problem is going to be is a lot of you like to move around. That may be a problem. So we have to look at how portability and moves is going to work, and whether it's not a guaranteed right, because still This is federal funding. States still have to meet the merits and rules of what the feds want. So HUD still will exist. So will its rules. So accepting the money doesn't give you a license to do whatever. However, Mr. Trump has said that these grants is for the state to determine, but there's still going to be some federal rules that will guide things. So I imagine if we're going to have portability where you can move state to state with a state voucher, that means more than likely states will begin to cooperate. At first, it's going to be hard probably to move around or use portability in the state system because it's going to take a while for all these states to get together. Now, I know that states are probably already talking in the background. I'm trying to get into that conversation with them so I can understand whether or not all 50 states are going to cooperate. That way we have portability nationwide. And of course, we don't have any dictated policies at the federal level to help us determine how much of the old system will play out into the state system. So I think at this time and age with technology and everything else, I think the portability is going to be rolled out. And again, there's going to be a lot of hiccups and a lot of errors, but there'll be a trial and error. Now, another thing we need to consider is looking at the system as a whole as we transition. There's another unfortunate consequence, again, besides housing authorities closing, which I'm sure none of you are going to miss that. A lot of nonprofits will close because the way these grants and funding are set up, it's to gut all this extra money. For the 50 years that HUD and all these programs have existed or more than half the funding that was ever issued by Congress was sucked up by housing authorities for a wide range of reasons. Now, when you remove that extra fat in the system, the housing authority has nothing to operate on. And a lot of nonprofits that, however, they made a very small margin as a nonprofit is gone. So we're going to see a transition to a newer system under the state where it's more lean, not so mean, but lean. And there'll be less wasteful spending. And with 2-year caps and a work requirement, look, 60-70% of all the vouchers, probably around 60 to 80,000 vouchers will return. It'll also will create another byproduct of this. The unfortunate consequence of putting these kind of rules in place is a lot of people will probably land on the street and become homeless, probably about 1 to 2 million. And it won't happen as one tidal wave. It'll happen over a course of time. And some of it will be because people just don't feel like it's worth chasing a 2-year voucher, and others, by incident, they just simply were unable to advance to making more money or doing better. So the first loophole that I clearly can see with all of this is, when you're looking at the perspective of switching to this system, I think the first thing that's going to happen is you're going to end up losing probably half the wait times. Second to that, I think that we're probably going to end up possibly having a situation where we have a lot of homeless people coming homeless over probably a 2 or 3 year span. And that's because as we transition, there's going to be less funding for that. And we don't know what's going to happen in 2027. So, we're looking at consequences. And many things that I projected would happen during the pandemic didn't. It actually, where I thought there would be a big mass volume of people losing housing, it actually happened incrementally over time. So it was a slow effect. And so we're looking at a reversal here. We're looking at a tightening of the system. And we're also looking at, each state, all states cooperate. Now, that's where I find troublesome because just like politics, there are red and blue states. And I'm wondering if all states are going to cooperate. And 2 states come to mind, Florida and California. I think about Florida's governor and I think about California's governor. Now, they're going to receive federal funds. There will be a Democratic way of looking at this and a Republican way of looking at this. My concern is that politics doesn't become so extreme between these 2 states that they decide not to cooperate, because that's going to create a problem at the state level for people needing this. Now, I'm not suggesting anybody politically need to be in either party in order to receive a voucher, but you see where some of the problems could pop up. All right, so I'll move back to comments. poetically made. The project housing, will they get rid of the buildings? Well, the housing authorities for 50 years have received, well, let's just say this, for 50 years, the federal government has issued funds down to housing authorities. The housing authorities took on a responsibility of being the third party in processing people's applications and giving them vouchers. Since Mr. Trump is going to hand a paycheck directly to the state, uh, there shouldn't be any more housing authorities. There's no need for it. Now, some cities like New York, Bronx, Queens, Manhattan, uh, if they hand that to the state, then likely, unless the state owns the housing authority and wants to convert the housing authority over to a state housing authority, and we may see state housing authority. That's another potential. But it seems to me New York already has a state system in place. In other words, I don't really see housing authorities surviving this at all. Many housing authority, not housing authority, but many of the trying to think of the name here. Many of the state voucher systems that are already in place can sufficiently meet this. They only need additional employees and, of course, proper training. And that training is issued by one singular company right now that seems to handle the majority of states. So, with an expansion of employees, they already have the infrastructure employees in place. With more federal funds coming in through those two block grants, then pretty much the new system will be the state employees as your new housing authority kind of deal, and ESG. Likely, the state will hand that over to nonprofits selectively with new rules, and then they will address homelessness, persons with HIV and AIDS, and also those that are elderly, homeless or elderly. So, and of course, you could go in between either system. Both grants that are being handed down by the president, Congress, to the state, it only rolls down to two grants. Again, it's going to be the Emergency Solutions Grant, or ESG. Number two is the State Rental Assistance Block Grant. Once that block grant goes down, ESG and the block grant go down to the state, they will determine at that point who gets what. Now, the way this is being set up makes me suspicious that most of this is going to be for vouchers. So many of you living in project-based and all that, you may be using a voucher from here on out. It won't be a situation because the state doesn't own all those properties. The housing authority does. Part of the luxury of owning a housing authority for 50 years and sucking funds out of the federals means they've got a lot of infrastructure in place, but it's old, right? So these are old project-based buildings. So housing authorities will likely have to sell all that, or they can sell it back to the state and then see if the state wants to deal with it, which I don't think they will. Then you have private landlords with tax credit properties. Well, that just re-enters the market because unless the landlords want to go through the state system, then likely they'll either rent out to just normal renters or otherwise. And we have other implications to be worried about. Not all landlords are going to want a 2-year voucher for those that are non-seniors and non-disabled. So that may create another artificial market inside of this. So we'll have to see how that will play out. All right, moving on down here. Brooklyn Nicole, I can see that with housing, kind of an outdated iPhone. It is. And I've largely advocated in my own mind that housing authorities were never very objective in this nature because they got too big too quick and they took on too many responsibilities. Now with only 2 grants left, you're compiling all the programs into just 2 simple grants. Then it's a much simpler system to navigate through. You apply, you meet the rules, and you either are going to be qualified to go ESG direction or you're going to go to the block grant. And in other words, you'll receive a state voucher, and the state voucher will be either recertifying every year for long term, or you get a two-year cap on it, and then you would meet pretty much the same kind of rules you would with the housing authority. The only difference is you're not doing all this in the housing authority anymore. Another advantage the state has is they're already able to set up the electronic infrastructure. In other words, they already have their software and everything there, and that software is new. Housing authorities often work with old software and old technology, and so the state's much more prepared to be able to make new advances against how they how they work. And so a lot of things that may have taken a typical housing authority a month, the state may be able to get it done in a week. So I think that switching to our newer system allows for newer technologies and other advancements, and will allow people to be able to get vouchers much quicker, to be able to qualify and understand where they are. Now, the good news, now a lot of you people are probably thinking, oh my God, a 2-year voucher, what are you talking about? Well, look, I can tell you anything that's a voucher that's 2 years will probably be very easy to get as well. So for those that need immediate housing and aren't necessarily worried about long-term, 2-year vouchers could be a temporary solution that could help solve a lot of incidental homeless. In other words, people that just had a crisis and just need a little bit of help getting off. And that's what rapid rehousing used to be. It was a 2-year program. And so I think, and then one other thing we're going to see is these 10 and 15, 8-year waiting lists, that stuff will be in the past. I mean, you start putting out 2-year vouchers and only seniors and disabled can use this for a voucher. That's like 60 to 70% of all vouchers. So that's a 60 to 70% reduction in the wait time and all the other bullshit you got to go through to get a Section 8 voucher through the state system. You're going electronically through their website like you would at the federal, except the difference is you don't have to deal with a backlog. Whatever funds they have available, this could end up being a rather smooth system. But I think that, at the start, what we may be facing is a lot of confusion, and interstate cooperation may be a problem because of politics, okay? So we're speculating, and it's good to speculate. It helps us kind of create concepts and ideas about what may or may not play out. And that's important. That's an important thing to consider. And we've only got about 6 months to wait. I'm going to be trying to figure out today when the next congressional hearing and vote will be. And if we don't see a change, if the Democrats do not take the House, this has all been done, okay? We don't need to wait actually till Congress gets there. We just need to find out whether or not the Republicans or the Democrats will take the House, okay? If the Republicans keep the House, this is the foregone thought. Once this happens, if the Republicans keep that House, then the only question will be which remains of HUD in the federal system will likely be evaporated probably in 2027, 2028. In other words, the only thing the federal system will do was determine how much money the states get, and that will be the end of it. And then, of course, they'll still be in place for other issues related to harassment, discrimination, and fair housing rules. That's it. It'll be a very limited scope. The HUD and HUD's building is gone. So there's not going to be some big building anymore. HUD will likely be absorbed through one of the other big federal agencies. So it'll just be a little department. So HUD will be a department of a different federal agency that already exists. Okay. All right. Moving from there, let's see. So yeah, we are speculating, guys. I'm not asking anybody to adopt what I'm telling you, but what I'm saying is the agenda we're covering, and I'm going to go over it very quickly again. The first proposal and series is going to be the Home Investment Partnership Home, the Community Development Block Grant, CDGB programs, all these including continuum of care, housing opportunities for persons with HIV or AIDS, and the emergency solutions grants will all be rolled into one thing called ESG, which we already have at the federal level. That's one grant that'll be handed down to the state. The second grant will be the State Rental Assistance Block Grant. That will be the second big chunk of funding, and that will include public housing, Section 8 tenant-based housing, which is your tax credit, project-based housing rental assistance, housing for the elderly, and housing for those that are disabled. That will be rolled into another block. There'll be a $26 billion cut to it. There'll be a 2-year cap put in there, and work requirements. So 2 big checks go on to every state every year, and we will be moving to a state voucher system. This is what's written This is what's written by Trump's administration in their 2026. Okay, so this part I know for sure, but that's all we have. Now I have done some additional research at state level, and again, states do already have a state voucher system in place. So again, the infrastructure is there. And then we speculate greatly after that what will happen. I would imagine, again, as they absorb all these funds, There'll be no need for housing authorities, and many nonprofits will become insolvent. And the state will take complete control, and they will determine at that point who gets what. There will be some federal mandates that will come down from the feds that when we give you this money, a certain allocation or a certain amount of money must be spent on the homeless, a certain amount for domestic violence, and so on. But from what I can see, once the feds hand down the funds in the form of grant blocks, there's two different blocks of money that the states will receive every year. It's really up to the state what they do with it. And I'd imagine that the easiest way to manage this is to hand out nothing but vouchers. All the other programs the Section 8 has invented over the last 50 to 80 years is what convoluted all this. I think they're going to be unwinding all that. And we don't know. And again, we don't really know at the state level whether or not there's going to be a lot of state cooperation. But considering, again, that most states already have the infrastructure in place and already issue state vouchers, I think the wisest way to play this would be simply to just issue the vouchers. I've not heard anything about home ownership. That's a complex matter, and I don't know that would be required by the government. Again, this administration says they're heading down the money, and it becomes a state's problem. So there may no longer be a lot of these programs. The states aren't going to want to open up 25 different avenues of housing, okay? And so likely we'll be moving to strictly a voucher system. So for those of you in home ownership, whatever you're going to do, you better do it now. If and I don't know whether or not this will be retroactive. The state doesn't necessarily have to go and continue to pay for something. So whatever you're going to do, make sure you do it now. Now, for those that already have, again, and you're in programs like Section 811, 202, all this stuff that you guys have, including vouchers, accommodations, all that, you're going to have to requalify through the state. The state is going to do exactly what it's been authorized to do, and that's determine how they use those federal funds. Okay, they're given a check for a certain amount, and they determine it. So you cannot walk into the state and tell them, "Oh, well, I've got 13 different accommodations. I require $16,000 a month for me and the kids." The state don't give a shit. They're going to requalify you and determine how much they want to spend on your case, and that'll be that. Okay. But the good news will be a lot of what we already have seen, since the rules, policies, and procedures appear to be closely guided by the old system, we can expect a lot of parallels between the system. But as far as every state wanting to have 50 different programs, I doubt it. I would think the easiest way to administrate all these federal dollars for each state would be moving again to a solid, just giving vouchers out, maybe including a home ownership program if they want, but all these additional programs you guys have been participating in, you're going to watch that all disappear. It's all, like I said, the feds roll it all into one grant, and then the states get the decision. So there's no mandate. They have to. That's what made the system so miserable. Is we created too many programs and trying to address too many things rather than a singular voucher to address everybody. The only other thing that was worth anything out of all this stuff was home ownership. All this other shit they created was a way to print money and give it to the housing authority. Why do you think housing authorities have 53 buildings? Where the fuck did they get all this money? It's easy. They have been shovel fed cash for 50 fucking years, making money fist over hand out of doing it. And they make even more the worse the employees they hire. So if you go hire Nancy on 3rd Street to be the project manager for the housing authority, which is usually the case, or you get Sally. Now she's 16. She's tossing cheeseburgers at McDonald's. Now she's your caseworker at the housing authority. You guys should be glad this shit's over with. I'll be so glad it's over. I don't empathize with any housing authority. There were a few that really should have earned gold awards, but many of them with the corruption, the nonsense, some of them didn't even have a GED, and they're working in there as your caseworker. Be glad this shit is over. I'm thrilled. I'm in a rat race myself right now because I know I've dealt with the state before and state employees in the voucher system. These people are a lot better. So long as you don't try the same bullshit with these people. Don't talk to them badly. Treat them with respect. They're not going to put up with the same thing the housing authorities were privately owned. It's like the Wild West, and you get handled by them and talk to them. They talk to you bad. The state ain't going to put up with that, okay? So I'm just warning you guys, the ones that love to open up court cases and sue and call 50 times an hour because you're having a schizophrenic moment. You pull that shit with the state, they're going to put you out, okay? It's a different system. It's you respect them, they'll respect you back. This is not like the old days dealing with housing authorities. So when you transition 2026, if you think all them games you've been playing with the housing authority are going to work with them, you're going to become a rude awakening. They'll just simply ban your ass for life, okay? I can tell you, state employees will not put up with that shit. So I'm telling you to kill it right now. If you think you're going to handle business the same way you did with the housing authority, send out demand letters and everything else, you can forget that too. They're not going to put up with your shit. And in fact, the state, giving it to the state allows them, they're going to have access to a whole lot because it's a state. It's not a private housing authority. They have access to everything in your life, and you live in their state. You do not want to become a nuisance to the state. I'm telling you. All right? I'm just warning you guys. Look, about 40% of the clients I deal with, they hire me, always do things, and I have seen them do more ridiculous things. I've had to get rid of clients because of behavior. So I'm just telling you, don't do that. All right. So Silver Fox had tried to call the housing authority 2 months ago and nothing. Look, most housing authorities are lucky at this point to keep the light bulbs on. Okay. A lot of them don't even want to open to give out a voucher. In other words, what remaining dollars they have, well, look, outside of selling the furniture, I don't know what to say. When Congress passes next year, if they pass this, that is the end of an era. There is no purpose or need for housing authority. The states ain't going to give out their money for that. Not when they look, if the state has two options, federal government gives them two big grants, right? Now they have option A. Let's go in subcontractors to the housing authority and give them what little profit there is, or we keep it and then we consolidate it, and then the state can be able to run it and profit themselves. The state ain't going to give no housing authority anything. So the housing authority just forget about it. It's over with. You're working in one, you might as well quit your job. It's over with. I'm telling you. If you don't believe me, and the next thing that goes, all the portfolios, state will probably make you one low ball offer, give you $1 a building, and that'll be it. That's over with. The state does not need the housing authority. Never has, never will. And for states that already have, and to be honest with you, the state does not care about what the city does. So if the city has a housing authority, there's no need for it. They know nothing about the state system. They're not involved in the state system. They don't practice policy and procedure at the state level. Housing authorities have no place in the future, period. There's nothing for them. A lot of these nonprofits that have 55 employees with a GED, a lot of that shit's over with too. Okay? So when they do US ESGs to help homeless, it will be probably directed at the state's discretion. They do not really need nonprofits, though it would be wise to partner with some of the big ones like Catholic Charities and a few others. The main reason I advocate so much for Catholic, I'm not even religious, but Catholic Charities is a $1 billion organization. They've always acted in the interest of people, and they've always been very good about what they've done. I can't say that for every nonprofit I've run across. Moving on from there, Brooklyn says, right, yep, and Joseph R. Total corruption HUD here in Oakland. Well, there won't be much more of that. Mickey and Angel, yep, used to live in Alameda County. You know, another thing is California, the days of you guys waiting forever and this mountain of people and waiting lists for 30 years, that will likely come to a very, very sweet end in 2026. 2-year caps, you're going to watch your waiting list vanish. They're only giving out long-term vouchers to seniors and disabled. So they'll have 2-year vouchers, yeah. But if you don't meet those requirements and you don't maintain those requirements, like food stamps has requirements, work requirements, then you're out of there. They're not even going to let you make it to 2 years. The first month you don't cooperate, you're out. Okay? Again, this ain't your local city running it anymore. It's the state running it. Let's make that clear. It will not be the city of Los Angeles running shit. It won't be Laisha running shit. It'll be the state of California and its employees. Let's be clear about this, guys. It won't be the state. It will not be your local city running anything. It will not be your housing authority. It will be the state and the state's employees. And I think all of you will be better off for it. So, again, going back to looking at loopholes and systems, nobody's here to exploit the system, but it could hurt to have a person that's 62 or disabled in your home. So my advice to you guys is if your household doesn't have that composition, you better start working on that, because that's the only damn way you're going to get a voucher or be on a voucher that's going to go over a long period of time. If you've ever had a backache, you've got a hangnail, you better go see the psychiatrist or the doctor and figure out whether you got a disability. Because otherwise, you get a 2-year voucher, and that's the end of the game, okay? And then you're going to be, you pick it up trash in the freeway, like the DUI, they're going to give you a jumpsuit. You can go out there and pick up trash all day and figure out how to earn your keep for the 2 years you get the voucher. Now, another great thing about this, for those that are seniors and disabled that will have long-term vouchers, you'll get a lot more rent money, because we no longer, now that we get rid of all the people that simply had no inspiration to work, that puts a lot of funds back in the system. That's why there's a big cut. Once you drop 60% of the vouchers off the market, then a lot of money flows back in, and you only need half the budget to run this. And that means that rent standards will likely be higher. It'll be easier for the state to be able to give out vouchers and pay landlords actually what their properties were. So this is a benefit to landlords. There's no reason to have to sit there and split a nickel in half. And so this is definitely going to be a great benefit to landlords. And that's another perspective. From here, going into 2026, I'm going to be looking at the potential fallout consequences and the benefits to landlords and how you're going to be able to navigate the new system, because this is new territory. But the good news is, since states already have the infrastructure in place and they already issue vouchers, I'll be very quickly be able to get a hold of most of policies and procedures. So we already have a running start. The goal here is from now till the next till Congress holds again for the next budget, is to teach you guys how to navigate the new system, okay? And a lot of it's going to seem very familiar, but the big difference is how you deal with the housing authority and how you deal with the state employees are a whole different story. How do I know that? My dad used to work for DODT, for the state. Look, you're not going to talk to these people sideways. And they're not going to put up with the feds put up with. They're not going to put up with what the housing authority. You're dealing with real people with real educations. They make decisions based on intelligence, not attitude, okay? So it's important that everybody remain respectful and decent when dealing with the state and their vouchers. That way, this will go well for everybody. We're not here to exploit the system, but to help you understand what you would qualify for and the best way to do it. And the best thing about all this, I think, in terms for people that qualify, is you're going to have a higher rent standard. There's more money available, and these long waiting lists are going to evaporate. And when I say evaporate, let's be reasonable. There's still going to be a wait, okay? First couple of years, this is going to be out. Probably we're going to be looking at a little bit of a wait, because half of America is going to be trying to battle to get these, all right? Except then there'll be half of America battling for a 2-year voucher, and about 10% of you the seniors and disabled will have much of a battle. You'll be first qualified priority, okay? So that's good news for you. Well, guys, I think I've rattled on enough. And again, we're discussing directly what's written into the 2026 proposal by Donald J. Trump. That's not speculation. 2 grants. The 2 grants, again, will be, Emergency Solutions Grant, ESG, to deal with homeless and other folks, and the State Mental Assistance Block, which will be the primary big budget, and that will address 2-year vouchers and state-level vouchers, okay? If the House of Representatives remains in public control, then this is all but ready to go next year. I'm smart enough to know that that's a 95% chance that this is going to happen. So my office is transitioning to consulting at the state level, and we'll be working through this. I'll be publishing a ton of videos and a lot of information, and we'll be compiling a list of all 50 states. I'm also going to make you guys privy to the companies that underwrite the policies, procedures for these companies, and then we'll figure out how those parallels work. There's a lot of unknowns, and I'm sure that'll be the same for the state as they make decisions. I'm hoping that this was the one chance we have in a lifetime to get out of the old nasty system into something that's better. The states have better technology. They're better organized. They've already practiced at a small level. They're not working with an antiquated system, and they've been given liberty, a lot of liberty. Here is a check for a certain amount of money. You decide how you spend it. That allows the state to be able to run this efficiently. So we're leaving an old system and we're going into a local system. My only concerns at this point will be interstate cooperation to allow portability. And of course, I'll be glad to see states like Florida and California be able to cooperate together to allow Americans with vouchers to continue to be able to move around the U.S. as they need. All right, I'm going to address a few more questions. Look, guys, there's a lot of questions, so obviously I can't stay forever. And there's going to be a lot of videos. So if I didn't answer your question, which is about 90% of you, I'll try to get you the next video. All right, so to be clear, you could be either or. You could be disabled or a senior, okay? You don't have to be both to have a more of a permanent voucher, okay? Now, look, if you're a senior or disabled, you win the lottery, you win a lawsuit, that could change the outcome of you having a voucher, okay? If Grandpa Davis leaves you, 500,000 acres of land and you become disqualified, okay? So there are some circumstances where a senior and a disabled person could lose your voucher if you become independently wealthy, okay? Let's be reasonable. Brooklyn Nicole, question. I'm in college, 22, residing with my parents who's disabled, who would say my circumstance is a bit more complex. There's nothing complex about it. You got a disabled parent. If they're on a voucher, then then the household composition will qualify for permanent voucher. Again, if your household composition has one disabled or a senior in it, you would qualify for long term. If you don't have either party in your family composition, you're up for a 2-year voucher. Same thing as rapid rehousing. If you don't know what that is, look it up. All right, Chanel Stover is project-based and project-based voucher 2-year limit. All of it's a 2-year limit. Starting next year, everything will be a 2-year limit except for vouchers issued to persons over 62 and vouchers issued to persons with a qualified disability. The head of household must be, or the primary applicant must be disabled, and the primary applicant or must be disabled or a senior, okay? That's how they've set the rules. Otherwise, you're on a 2-year limit. So those, again, you better go out and figure out whether or not you got health problems. Potentially made, Shalom, freedom, for those who will be on a 2-year cap. Let's say something happens then. We don't know the extenuating. We're speculating on the terms of the 2-year. So we don't know if you're on a 2-year, you get a 2-year voucher. We don't know the rules, whether you could reapply and get it again. That's all to be determined, because this is completely new. The state will set the rules for that, and I don't have a copy of that. I would imagine most states are scrambling right now in boardrooms to figure out how to handle this, because most states are going to receive $1 billion check. Once they receive $1 billion check, they really need to have a plan in place. Now, since they already have staff to handle state vouchers already at a small level, then they're discussing hiring new people, and then of course how to go from a small office to a bigger one, because they don't need the housing authority. The housing authority is irrelevant in the circumstance. They will play no part in what the state does. Brooklyn Nicole, understood. Angela Patterson, grateful for you sharing. Have a wonderful week. Well, thank you. Guys, anytime y'all thank me, I'm always extremely ingratiated by that. I've been doing this a long time. This is why you're getting information you're not going to get from other people, because I'm an actual consultant. Everybody else on YouTube, as far as I can tell, these are entertainers, okay? They're making information based on what they read on Google. I don't do that. We base all information on policy, procedures, data manuals, code of federal regulation. Soon it will be state regulation. We also base it on what Congress does, proprietary budgets issued directly by the White House, okay? My channel's not based on reading Yahoo and see if I can put up a clever thumbnail to see if I can attract people and talk about a bunch of nonsense, okay? That's an entertainer, and that's the math. That's pretty much 100% what's on YouTube outside of my channel. Vulture water bug. Good morning. Hopefully we can be getting better quality neighbors. I think so. Kenzie, how about low-income housing? Will that be changing? Yes, it will. Again, all housing, everything under Section 8 will either be a 2-year cap or a long-term permanent voucher. You have to qualify. There's not going to be any more 202, 811 subsidies, none of that. State's not going to do all that. So if you're in a 211, 811 building, a lot of these landlords will probably sell, and they maybe come up with an agreement with the state. Everybody's going on vouchers at this point. The housing, let me tell you, the state's not interested in owning a bunch of crack houses, okay? They're not going to be interested in owning project-based housing and all that. The state has no interest in that. The only interest of the state is to keep this sufficient and issue people vouchers. That means everybody go out and find a place to rent. There's probably not going to be any of that. The state's not. Why would the state receive $1 billion and then want to repeat the same disaster that the feds did? Their only objective is to receive funds, qualify people for a voucher, and you go find a place to live. All this other stuff, low-income housing, all that, that's all a thing of the past. So for you landlords that own a low-income property, you need to switch that agreement over to allow vouchers. Okay. Now, if you guys want to remain in a low-income property, then probably you just need to take your new voucher through the state and then use them there for those that qualify. If you have a 2-year or if you have a permanent, okay? But all that other stuff will be wiped out because as I mentioned before, I'm going to say it again. The feds will be issuing a state rental assistance block grant. This will combine public housing, Section 8 tenant-based housing, project-based housing, housing for the elderly, and housing for the disabled, rolled into one cash roll. It'll be given to the state, and the state will issue a voucher. They're not interested in running projects. They don't own properties, none of that stuff. So if you're in a low-income property, 811, 202, then that landlord needs to come around and start accepting vouchers. Otherwise, go out of business, sell the building. The state is not going to be interested in buying a bunch of project-based houses. I'm telling you, their only objective is to have enough staff to qualify people for vouchers, and you can find a private landlord. Now, you can private landlord, or you can go out and go to one of the former low-income properties and use your voucher there. So these properties are not going to disappear. They're just only going to accept a voucher. You're not going to walk into a leasing office and request that you be a low-income tenant. It won't work that way anymore. Okay? That's why Trump decided to simplify this by shutting down to 55,000 different programs and rolling into one singular voucher. And either your landlord wants to accept the voucher or he doesn't. You either have a 2-year voucher, don't you see? So we're taking and we're simplifying this into two things: a 2-year voucher or permanent voucher, and you use the voucher wherever the hell you want. It doesn't matter that buildings are low income or senior properties anymore. It only matters that the building accepts the state level voucher. That's it. And that's really what we should be coining the term as. This is a state voucher. This is backed by federal funds. That's all it is. So all these other programs that everybody's in, it's all been consolidated or gotten rid of. And family self-sufficiency, gone. I doubt the housing. I doubt the state's going to get involved in home ownership right now. That's a program they've been trying to shut down for 20 years. So I doubt they're going to be involved in that. Of course, they have a responsibility for those that are already in the program to do it. They may choose to introduce that under a different presidential term if they expand funding. But right now, there's only enough money to give seniors and disabled long-term vouchers if they qualify yearly, and a 2-year voucher under ESG or the state rental assistance program if you qualify, and you're going to have to go back to work. If you fail to go back to work or meet the terms, then you lose the 2-year voucher, okay? I don't know what the rules will be after that because they haven't made them yet. Jessica, what about 236? Again, guys, you're asking all these programs. If all these programs are now rolled into one funding level, they no longer will exist in 2026. Only thing that will exist at the state level will be a state voucher. That is it. All other programs have been evaporated. That was a problem to start with. Too many things, right? You think about Congress. You see that big, beautiful bill. You see how many people wanted to be in the bill and get money and how many different ways that was going, and why they call it a skinny bill. The objective of this administration was to shut down 10,000 different programs that waste money and constructively do one singular thing: give people a voucher, you go find a home. That's it. When you do that, you don't need twice the budget anymore. You see how that worked out? You don't need the housing authority being the middleman. So the housing authority suck up 20% of all the federal dollars every issue. That's why they've got 25 different buildings that are project based. Well, why don't they repair the project? Well, it's simple. It's easier for them to keep collecting money. Well, that game's over. That's it. You better sell your portfolio and just close your doors. It's over next year. And if you're working in the housing authority, I can tell you right now, you're not going to work for the state. They're not going to put up with all that nonsense at the housing authority. And many housing, talking to people badly and all that, the state's not going to put up with that. So don't even get any delusional ideas. You're going to leave the housing authority and go work for the state. They're not going to want you. Okay. If you didn't finish your bachelor's degree, they're not going to want you. So that eliminates 99% of the housing authority. Maybe the top tier employees, but even then, if I were the state, I wouldn't hire the housing authority, any of their employees, because it would set a really bad precedence with this. If I were the state, I would continue to hire highly qualified people under the new system with new technology and keep it fresh so people can trust you. People want to trust the state they live in. They want to vote in their own politicians. They want to trust you guys. Don't make the mistake of partnering with housing authorities. Julie Bryans, we already have Georgia Housing in Savannah. Okay. Do you understand that when the state picks this up, it will be two separate systems, okay? The one the state already has with state level funding, and then they'll also receive federal funding. So it will be a little small division there. So there'll be secondary opportunities. Again, we're only talking about the federal funds going to the state, not the existing system in place. The existing system in place only address monies coming from taxpayers in the state. I don't want to get involved in what the state does there. Only where the federal government gives them money in that portion. So there'll still be a division. Okay, so you brought up a good topic. So there's already most states already have state vouchers. Okay. We're not going to be discussing that part. That's what taxpayers do in their own state and choose to do and fund. What we're talking about is when they receive federal dollars and they deal with federal money and vouchers, okay? The smaller programs the state already deals with, their own, so there's state vouchers and there's federal state vouchers, federally funded state vouchers. We're just going to address federally funded state vouchers, okay? I'm glad you brought that up. So, look, I'm telling you guys, a lot of you are going to be pleasantly surprised dealing with the state. I think you really, really will. They care. They're local. The way probably this should have been done to start with. We should have adopted certain rules from the beginning. But we've had this program so long. I mean, we built out this monstrous system with 40 million rules. Hell, even HUD's website was 30,000 pages. Has anybody noticed that Trump ordered that the entire HUD website be gutted? Only 10% of it remains because this is an old broken system. So this is easier. Roll up all the money, hand it directly to the state and say, hey, you guys determine who gets the vouchers. We get all these programs. This is why the whole thing was convoluted to start with. Be glad for this. And look, after this term for Mr. Trump, maybe a Democrat takes the office and they may remove the 2-year term. Okay. This may only be a temporary effect, but be glad for the new system is what I'm telling you guys. If they pass it, be glad for that. This will be a much easier system. It'll be much simpler, a lot less fraud. The state has no interest in becoming insolvent. The state has no interest in hiring people with an attitude or hiring streetwalkers to work as caseworkers. You see what I'm saying? Be glad for it. It'll cut down wait times tremendously. All right, so dangerous name. Where can I find the laws in the new bill so I can read them? Well, you can find the new laws and rules in 2026 when Congress passes this, and then the state determines what they're going to do at the local legislature. As of right now, you can find your proposal to the White House, and that will be for your state rental assistance block grant. Okay. So if you guys are wondering, they have not created rules and policies for it. It needs to clear for 2026. But if you want to see the proposal that Mr. Donald J. Trump wrote, you can go to thewhitehouse.com and look at the skinny proposal, and it'll tell you exactly two things. He's got two proposed budgets, one for emergency solutions grant to be handed down to the state, and the second is the state rental assistance block grant. The rules have yet to be determined, but it would be foolish for the state to not follow the parallels of the feds in terms of how to run this. It's just they have a better and newer technology to do so. Okay. HUD is federal. Yeah, HUD's always been federal. It's called the Urban Development of Indian Affairs, though we most quaintly leave off the Indian part. Hopefully they get rid of the riffraff. Well, the state will never hire riffraff, so I think the conversations in your caseworkers through the state, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised at the new level of conversation. It'll be straight to the point, but you'll be dealing with educated people now, okay? There'll be no more of this hanging up and not answering the phone, not answering the door, lying to people, having people that have never even read their own policies and procedures. All those things will become a thing of the past. Here's a website for getting a letter to the White House. Well, I appreciate that. Stephen LaPointe, the old system never worked. And we just kept stacking more on there. I mean, look at the huge volume of programs we had. We had $60 billion worth with like 80 different programs. And then we're hiring the worst possible people to work at a housing authority. The only and a huge conflict of interest with the housing authority, because their only incentive is to buy as many buildings as can make them money, and then never answer the phone or the door since the pandemic. I'm glad this shit's over. I'm thrilled. It'll make my job so much easier. It means when people call me, I can solve their problems in 30 minutes. So what will be the income guidelines? Again, guys, until this passes for 2026, I can't give you income guidelines. As soon as I get that information, I'm going to publish it. This is what we have. We have the perspective, what was written by Donald J. Trump and what he intends on doing for 2026. And in 6 months, there'll be a big explosion. That'll be in the end of the housing authorities, and that will be the beginning of the state. And then as quickly as I can get it, the policies, procedures, and data manuals, I'll be publishing a mad amount of video. Matter of fact, from now all the way into 2026, you're going to see a ridiculous amount of videos come out of our channel, because we're literally transitioned from feds handling this down to the state. Okay. So we have a whole lot to cover. We're going to do lots of speculating because we don't know yet. It's still the state's decision how they want to handle things. It still has to happen through Congress, but 95% chance that's going to happen. So our channel will be speculating along with you guys. If it don't happen, it'll really be sad, because to be frank with you, this administration is pretty much gutted the federal system. I don't see we recovering and going back to the old system. It's too damaged. What's the next president going to do? Oh, well, let me hire 90% more employees for HUD. Let's crank up the old housing authorities and have everybody treated like trash and streetwalkers. Let's waste another $50 billion. You know, who's going to want to go back to the old system after this? Nobody. Not only that, but Mr. Trump has another two or 3 years in budgets to go, right? He's got 2 more budgets. And I'm pretty sure he's going to gut this thing completely. He ain't going to leave anything left. HUD will be renting an office in another federal agency. What's going to happen? I'm pretty sure of that at this point. Every year since now that he's been in office, 2025, 2026, every time he takes a huge, massive swipe at HUD. You give him 2 more years, there won't be nothing left but the sign. We're already almost there. I mean, we sold the building. Is it not any more clear to you people that the feds are no longer going to handle vouchers and housing? They're simply going to cut a check to the state. They stole HUD's building. There's 10% of the employees left. Housing authorities are on the absolute edge of insolvency, most of them. A lot of them are fearful to even issue a voucher. The ones that have money are just giving it away, and their portfolio is worthless. They're going to start selling off their portfolio. How else are you going to keep the light bulbs on? It's the state decision. You think the state's going to want to have any agreement with the housing authority? Why would you go down to the corner and hire a bunch of hookers to work for the state? That's how I feel about it. So you guys need to get prepared to deal with the state and its workers, people that actually went to school. They actually got their certificate. Okay. So you'll be dealing with the state and its employees. And I can guarantee you one thing, the state don't fuck around. They deal with educated people. The state don't fuck around. And they're not the housing authority. And all you should be glad for that. Now, maybe we'll loosen the strings as the years go on in terms of the 2-year cap, but this is pretty much the end of the old system. And we were talking about this anyways. Why is this such a big surprise to everybody? We all knew something was coming. The first proposed idea was cash payments. Well, it turns out if you put the right president in there in terms of housing, you just gut the system and then turn the whole housing system over to each individual state and fund it that way. That would eliminate the 95,000 different programs, shut down HUD, and then we would be dealing in a more modern system. States have much more modern systems to efficiently run this. Now, if we decide to bring this back to the feds, then they'll need to reinvent it. The old system will never work again. And it would be too much money. No president going forward is going to want to relight an old candle. I'm telling you. This is the end of it. You're watching it die. I mean, you saw what happened in 2025 with all the cuts, right? Everybody was, it's all you're going to read on the news. Now we're sitting here and we're in 2026. We sold HUD's a building. HUD's now renting an office and inside of another federal agency. And Trump said 2 very clear things in the skinny budget. There will be 2 grants, and both big blocks of money will go to each state, and they will run it. The end. How much more clear do I need to make this? There's not going to be the old system. Okay? That's not speculation. That's clear. Have you not known Trump to do what he says he's going to do? Well, sometimes, but for the most part, it's done. There's nothing left of HUD anymore. This will be a state matter going forward. Be glad for the state. I'm telling you guys, be glad for that. Be glad if you're disabled and be glad if you're a senior. Well, guys, I've advocated enough. I believe in our state government better than I ever did in the feds. And I won't say it was the feds I ever had a problem with. I never had a problem with HUD. I had a problem with housing authorities and all the abuses and all the videos we had to make about housing authorities running the housing authority like a mafia. I had a problem with 7 to 9, anywhere from 10 to 20 different housing authorities become insolvent because they stole everything, stole every nickel, inappropriate use, misconduct, fraud, and everything else, hiring convicted felons to work at housing authority. That's what I had a fucking problem with. And the fact that we would allow housing authorities to literally suck up 20 to 30% of all the federal funding so they could enrich themselves and then turn around and slam people project-based housing and talk to people like shit. And since the pandemic, you can't even get them on the phone. You can't go in. And when you do, you're talked to like you're from a third world country. Is that really what we all want to go back to? Is that what you guys want to see? Now, when the state runs thing, you've got to qualify. You don't have a bachelor's, then get out. You're nothing but the maid. You're the janitor. You're there to scrub the toilet. The state don't hire fools. They're using a much newer technology, and they're not going to have 58,000 programs. And for seniors and disabled, you'll be able to get vouchers at a rapid pace because the state's not going to put up the same bullshit as when you have a bunch of people that don't even have their kindergarten certificate. Now, don't get me wrong, housing authorities do have high-level employees with good education, but the vast majority of the caseworkers, I could have done better by going down to a prostitute's house and hiring everybody there. 95% of the time, the calls my office gets is because of behavior of the housing authority employees lying, professional misconduct, everything else. Lawsuits flying around the country all the time because housing authorities are getting sued for misconduct, fraud, and everything else. I mean, you might as well open the housing authority in the county jail. Well, guys, before I go off the deep end here and say some things I'll likely regret in my own channel, use a bunch of profanities, which will have you guys try to put me in check for. I'm going to wrap it up. I think we discussed plenty in terms of this. You can go down to the president's budget and the creation of the state rental assistance block grant and ESG. You can look at this plan. If Congress remains in Republican control as of 2026, this will be the new way of things. The last 20% of HUD will likely be dissolved and will only remain as a small office that rents under and will be placed under another federal agency. Okay. This is what the future holds, and this is how it's going to go. There will be 2-year term limits. If you don't want to get your ass off the mattress and go work, then you don't keep your voucher. Okay. For seniors and disabled, you may requalify every year. The state will begin to underwrite its policies and procedures, likely through a big company. If you want to look into policies and procedures at the state level and how they run things, you may go to NAHRO. They are the company that underwrites most of the policies and procedures at the state level for issuance of vouchers. And so that company is going to be the new. Now, remember back in the day, we talk about the feds and vouchers and Section 8. We would talk about Nana McKay being the one that wrote all the policies and procedures. Well, the new big dog in town is going to be NAHRO. Okay. I'm going to try to get the links out to you. Also, my company will be looking at the state rental assistance program on all 50 states. We'll be compiling a database along with all policies and procedures. We're going to use that as a launch board to try to understand how this will work going into 2026. And look, guys, it won't be perfect at first, but everybody needs to have patience. Whatever you have currently, you'll be transitioning to something different and requalifying. Okay. And I'm going to remind you again, when dealing with the state, you need to be well behaved. Okay. Don't talk to these people like trash. Don't try any games with them. Just go through the system where you're supposed to. Don't be a nuisance. Okay. I know a lot of you have gotten into this general attitude of dealing with housing authorities. The state's a lot different gambit than that. Okay. And they deserve a lot more respect. If you'll do that and remain patient and cordial with state employees, I'm telling you, this will go well for you. You'll like your relationship with your housing authority. I'm sorry, not the housing authority, with your caseworker there, and you'll find that you're treated with a little bit of dignity and respect. Okay, so this is what you have to look forward to. We'll talk a little bit more again tomorrow. I'm going to look up some more policies and procedures, and we're going to determine how the states are likely to roll out this for each state. It's going to take a while. We're talking about hundreds of videos, and so we're going to dig a little deeper tomorrow. So all I ask, guys, I got a lot to do tomorrow personally, so I think we will do our video around 4 or 5 p.m. Central Standard Time if you want to join me. Anybody wants to verify the validity of this conversation, you're welcome to go look at whitehouse.com, look at the skinny budget for Trump, and you'll see exactly what he prescribes for 2026. Okay? There's no double talk about that. It happens if Congress approves it. And at current, Congress does exactly what Mr. Trump wants. And so unless they lose, again, if they lose the Democrats in the House, this will pass, and that will be the end of an era. That will be the end of Section 8. Project-based household, that will be the end of the era. We're moving on, okay? You guys need to start accepting that and be glad that we're finally moving on. Well, guys, I've enjoyed talking with you. My name is Jay. I am the owner of Section8Consulting.com. If you have questions, comments, please leave them here. I will try to answer as many as I want. These videos are extremely popular. I can't answer 20,000 comments. I'll try my best. We'll see you tomorrow at around 4 or 5 Central Standard Time, and we'll continue on this path throughout the year. Thank you, and have a great day.